Don't make a sound. I know, I see him too. Just breathe. Let him pass.
Where?
Don't look. Straight ahead.
Okay.
12:37 p.m., 11/11/2025. GMZ. Billionaire CEO steps into his Bentley, then one word from a black woman stops him cold. 37 p.m., 11/11/2025. GMZ. Stop! Don't move another inch. Alexander's hand froze on the gear shift. One word from a black woman standing boldly in front of his Bentley cut through his morning routine like lightning. He had commanded boardrooms, owned skyscrapers, and navigated the world with absolute control. But this stopped him cold. The street fell silent. Phones appeared. Eyes widened. And in that single heartbeat, the billionaire CEO realized the world he thought he ruled had boundaries he couldn't buy, influence he couldn't command, and truths he had long ignored. This is the story of a CEO halted by courage and reality. Welcome, story lovers. Where are you watching from? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. It was another crisp morning in the heart of the city. The streets shimmered under the first light of dawn. Glass towers reflected the sun. Luxury cars hummed along wide avenues as if announcing the power and wealth of their owners. Among them, Alexander Drake moved with an effortless grace that only decades of success could afford. The billionaire CEO of one of the world's largest investment firms, he was known for his charm, his sharp suits, and the way he could command a boardroom with nothing more than a glance. To outsiders, his life looked perfect. Penthouse apartments, private jets, and a garage full of the finest cars money could buy. But what truly defined his mornings wasn't the power or prestige. It was routine. He drove the same route every day, greeted the same doorman, sipped the same espresso, and nodded politely at the familiar faces of the office staff. Life was predictable, controlled, and comfortable, precisely the way he liked it. Yet beneath that polished exterior, there were cracks no one ever noticed. Alexander had always believed that hard work, vision, and an iron will could insulate him from the harsher truths of the world. But some lessons couldn't be bought, and some walls couldn't be built high enough. On this morning, as he stepped toward his gleaming black Bentley, a sense of anticipation hung in the air, an invisible pulse that something was about to disrupt his carefully curated life. Unseen by Alexander, the city itself seemed to hold its breath. A black woman, moving briskly along the pavement, glanced up from her phone just as he approached. Her eyes caught his reflection in the shiny hood of the car. There was a word forming in her mind, urgent and impossible to ignore, a word that would freeze him in place, unravel the certainty of his morning, and set the stage for a moment neither of them could have anticipated. It was an ordinary morning, or so he thought. But in a single heartbeat, everything about his controlled, golden life teetered on the edge of an unexpected confrontation. Alexander adjusted the cuff of his tailored sleeve as he opened the Bentley door, the leather interior gleaming in the morning sun. The world outside seemed calm, orderly, and as predictable as his meticulously planned life. But the moment he settled into the driver's seat, the first ripple of unease slid across his chest, subtle and unexplainable. A black woman, dressed smartly, carrying a briefcase, stood a few feet away, staring. Her eyes were sharp, and her posture held a tension he couldn't place. He ignored her at first, pressing the ignition and feeling the engine roar to life beneath him. He was in control here, in the machine he knew better than anyone else, surrounded by a cocoon of privilege that had insulated him from the harsh realities most people faced. But as he glanced toward the rearview mirror, something about the way she looked at him made his breath catch. There was a weight behind her gaze, quiet, unyielding, impossible to dismiss. As the car rolled forward, a valet waved, expecting a nod or a gesture of acknowledgement. Alexander offered neither, too absorbed in the strange pull he felt from the woman's presence. Her lips moved, forming a single word, urgent and commanding. He couldn't hear it clearly at first, but the tone cut through the hum of the city and the engine's purr, sharp enough to stop him in his tracks. Hesitation was foreign to him. His entire life had been a series of decisive actions. Yet something about this moment froze him. The city around them carried on unaware. Commuters rushed past, horns honked, and digital billboards flickered with advertisements. But inside the car, time slowed. Alexander's mind raced. Questions, disbelief, and unease collided. He had never encountered anyone who dared confront him so directly, especially not someone outside his world of influence. And yet, here she was, standing firmly, a living reminder that the world was not his to control. As the seconds stretched, his thoughts spiraled. Who was she? Why was she here? And why had a single word, just one, caused him to hesitate, to feel exposed in a way no business meeting or public appearance ever had? His morning routine, his carefully controlled environment, and even his sense of superiority had no answers. The tension mounted. Bystanders began to notice the unusual scene. A billionaire halted in his own car, a black woman standing defiantly in front of him. Phones began to appear, recording. Whispers traveled quickly, an undercurrent of judgment, curiosity, and tension threading through the crowd. And then it happened. A subtle shift in her expression, a quiet assertion of authority that seemed impossible to ignore. In that instant, Alexander understood that this was not about cars, boardrooms, or money. It was about power, recognition, and justice. The routine of his life, once impenetrable, now wavered under the weight of reality he had ignored for too long. One word had stopped him cold, and the next moments would change everything. Alexander's hand hovered over the gear shift, the engine still humming beneath him, but he could no longer ignore the woman standing before him. Her eyes locked onto his, unwavering, fearless. In that instant, every carefully constructed layer of control he had relied on all his life began to crumble. The street around them seemed to blur, the luxury cars, the pedestrians. Even the towering buildings faded into insignificance. She spoke again, her single word now unmistakable, carrying authority, truth, and defiance in equal measure. It cut through his ego, through his assumptions, and pierced the bubble of privilege he had long taken for granted. A silence fell over the street, punctuated only by distant honks and the faint murmur of onlookers who sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Alexander's mind raced. Anger, confusion, and fear collided in a storm he had never known. He realized, with a sharp, sinking clarity, that no wealth, no influence, no title could shield him from this confrontation. The crowd began to lean in, phones raised, recording every second. The weight of judgment pressed down on him as the woman held her ground. In that split second, he saw the truth of countless untold stories, the quiet courage, the unseen barriers, the systemic injustices that he had always been able to ignore. And then, as he looked into her eyes, he understood that this was not a question of money or power. This was a reckoning, one heartbeat. One choice, one word had stopped him cold. Would he continue down the path of ignorance, or would he confront the reality he had long avoided? The moment stretched like eternity, leaving him suspended between what he had always known and the truth he could no longer deny. Dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. Alexander finally exhaled, the tension in his body slowly easing. However, the weight of the moment remained heavy on his shoulders. He rolled back the engine, the familiar hum of the Bentley now sounding foreign, as if mocking the life he had taken for granted. The woman, still standing with calm defiance, turned and walked away, leaving him suspended in a silence louder than any boardroom applause he had ever received. For the first time, Alexander saw his world differently. Every privilege he had counted on, every barrier he assumed impenetrable, had been confronted by a single word spoken with courage and dignity. It was a small act on the surface, yet monumental in its impact. The reality of racial injustice, the subtle and overt barriers, the silent judgments, the systemic inequities, was no longer abstract. It was tangible, undeniable, and personal. In the days that followed, Alexander's life shifted. Meetings, power plays, and accolades continued, but his perspective had changed. He began to question his assumptions, to listen where he had only dictated, to confront biases he had long ignored. The encounter with the Bentley became a turning point not just for him, but also a reminder to all who watched. Moments of courage can ripple far beyond their origin, and yet, the story leaves a haunting question. How many lives like hers are still demanding recognition? Justice and respect while the world hesitates? How often do we ignore what is right because it challenges our comfort, our control, our power? This wasn't just Alexander's lesson. It was a reflection of societies, and it was up to everyone to choose whether to confront it or look away. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.